Okay, let's try it again. Hello and welcome to the Secret Adventures of Black People. I'm your host, Nicole Hill. My favorite place to be, come Christmas time, besides in front of the TV, is in the kitchen. It feels like watching a play or a dance or something. We're chopping up this and seasoning that and putting things in the oven and then throwing other things on the stove. And everybody is telling stories and these little anecdotes that get broken up whenever something starts steaming or buzzing. Now, I figured this is probably not just an American experience, but to be sure, I decided to check in with our cousins over in London. Okay, and so growing up, well, are you from London? Did you grow up
Yeah,
there?
that's right. Yeah. So me and my brothers were born and raised in London, but my dad is from Ghana and my mum is from Guyana, which is a Caribbean country in South America.
I called Athena to hear what Christmas was like in the UK. Athena's a mom. Baby Aya was going to make a couple appearances in this episode. And she's also a comedian and a writer, and she's black and British. But it's not that simple. Athena told me all about the kitchens of a traditional British household come Christmas time.
Like everything. So it's a Christmas dinner, but it's not like an English Christmas dinner. It's a Christmas dinner that you get when you're half African, half Guyanese.
But why jerk turkey before Christmas?
It's just how you season. It's just how you season chicken. I mean, to be honest, it's not jerk because if it's proper jerk, you're supposed to cook it on a barbecue. But our turkey is black. Okay, when it comes out of the oven, it's not burnt black, but it's black from the seasoning. If that makes sense. So when I see other people's, I remember when I obviously we tend to grow up in vacuums. So when I went off to university and you meet how other people and you see how they cook, they would just like kind of take a chicken and just put it straight in the oven. And I didn't know people lived like this. I was like, what are you doing? But yeah, lots of seasoning. And I guess the closest way to describe the way we season chicken is sort of jerk seasoning. It probably isn't proper jerk, I'm not Jamaican. But it's, when you say jerk, people know what you mean. Like a really thick, sticky, peppery, hot, sweet, savoury, delicious kind of seasoning. Goes on the meat 24 hours before, and then it gets roasted. And then we used to make it all. And every year, like once I started to get good in the kitchen, I do different things every year. So I do like mac and cheese, I do roast salmons, and I used to like doing fun things like vodka jellies.
Hey, wait, is it like a very black thing to have mac and cheese there? Like, is mac and cheese very important to black people over there?
I think it is. I think that mac and cheese is a Caribbean thing, but it's also, I know it's a big thing in America too.
It's very important, like the most important.
So and it's weird. I can't understand how both Americans and Caribbean people are really into mac and cheese, but obviously there was some dialogue there. And there was a meeting, and it was tabled, and it was agreed that we would eat mac and cheese with our roast dinners.
Yes.
So so Christmas was really a big deal in our household, like a really big deal. And my mum and my older brother particularly lean very heavily into the holidays. Like it's definitely my brother's favorite time of the year. And there's probably like personal reasons for that. For like a long time when my brother was young, it was just kind of him and my mum, because my dad didn't really stay in the UK, but it's a long story, but it was basically my mum and my brother by himself. So I think they really loved Christmas because that was a time for them to be together. They could decorate the house, they could visit people, they could spend money without feeling guilty about it. We used to make our mince pies from scratch, and we still do. So
what is a mince pie?
Oh my god, a mince pie! My god, you are not British. A mince pie is basically a small pastry, and it's filled with something called mincemeat, but there's no meat in it. Minced meat is just basically raisins and dried fruit, and like English people put suet in it, which is pig fat, but we don't use that. because that's like pagan stuff. We don't have no pork.
Godless people.
Exactly. But yeah, mincemeat is just like a very sweet. It's almost like a really savoury jam made out of raisins, and it sounds disgusting. It really
sounds so gross.
Yeah, it really does. I think a lot of people outside of the UK are like mince pies are gross, but we make them from scratch in our household, so we never bought in mince pies. And I think they're really nice when you make them from scratch. What's really weird is that my parents aren't British, but I probably know more British traditions than British-born people.
Really? Was it important to them? They were like, we got to make this real British.
I don't think my mum did it because she wanted us to be British. I think when she first came to this country, she needed something to do, so she learned how to bake, and she learned how to bake off from the TV shows on at the time and the recipe books at the time. You couldn't go to a shop and buy a Guyanese cookbook, or a Caribbean cookbook, but you could buy English stuff. So she learned how to make pies and jams and roast dinners and a lot more pies. English people like pies.
Yeah.
Lots of pies. And gravies and cakes and all these things. So I grew up in a household where, actually, now you mentioned Dickensian earlier. I grew up in a really traditional English Christmas household. None of my black friends really lent into Christmas as much as we did. I was always conscious of the fact that I remember having this boyfriend, and he came to our house for Christmas Day once, but I had to pick him up. And when I went to his house, he was Congolese. And when I went to his house, they didn't even have a turkey. There was no decorations. They were like, we might go to, yeah. And they were like, we might go to the shops later. And I was like, but they're all shut. Like, what are you doing? And I think most people who are kind of African or Caribbean descended, they do their own version of Christmas. So they'll do rice and peas and their own jerk or curry. But we always did it the British way, but with our twist. We always really were like, well, this is the tradition, so let's do it this way. And I became conscious. Well, I became conscious of that, but I didn't feel bad about it. I just thought, oh, okay, most people are normal, and they just they don't. But we've just done things a bit different.
Knowing all the different places you come from, all the different traditions that you're weaving together, in the UK, I'm so curious, do you all consider yourselves Black, or is it kind of do you consider yourself specifically where you're from? What does being Black mean over there?
I think that's a really hard question to answer. And I think perhaps what's different to maybe the African-American experience to ours is that obviously there's lots of Africans now in America who literally come from the continent or other Caribbean countries. But generally speaking, if you're, when you're Black British, you're second generation or maybe third generation. So you have a real connection to the country. You don't feel connected to Britain in that way. We've not been there for 5, 6, 7 or 8 generations. We've been here a much shorter time. And I'm actually mixed race. My mum is Indian. So there's lots of Indians in the Caribbean. And my mum is Indian Caribbean from Guyana. So do I see myself so I can only speak to my personal identity, or how I see my personal identity. Now, I definitely have to say that I'm British, because when I go to Ghana, they're like, you're British. I was born here, I sound British, I have some British sensibilities. I use my British passport to get into countries where people from those countries couldn't travel at all in their passports. I have all the privileges of somebody that was born in this country. I have an NHS, free healthcare, and all these other things. So if I don't call myself British, I do a disservice to the journey that my parents made, and also I kind of betray the idea that nationality is just admin. Nationality really is just administration. You fill in a form and you get a passport in the post. So my passport says British, so I'm British. That's the end of it. But I definitely see myself as, mixed race / Black British. But what I feel quite strongly is that doesn't mean a person who sees me with that label can make an assumption about me, because it's just not possible. We are too diverse. We grew up. And also, Britain's a big place. What if you come from Scotland? What if you come from Wales? What if you come from Northern England? What if you come from Southern England? But being Black British is a thing, but it's many things. So when I say I'm a Black British person, it's not a helpful label because it doesn't mean anything. But what it does mean is that you can ask me questions just to kind of like, okay, what kind of Black British am I? And I can say, oh, I'm Indian Guyanese, I'm Black Ghanaian, and I was brought up in North London. Every Christmas, it would be a real treat when we were kids. We'd go to a department store called Brent Cross, which is in North London. It's quite famous if you're from North London. And our treat would be to pick out a new thing to decorate the house with, whether it would be like something big for the tree, or a new set of lights, or a new thing to hang from the window. And we still have all of this stuff. So I can remember going to the shops and picking out all this stuff at Christmas. And I think, looking back, I think it's because like we weren't like a poor family, but we weren't like really rich. So it was about how can we it's dark, it's cold, it's miserable. How can we just pick ourselves up? And so I think Christmas was very therapeutic. And because a lot of our family aren't in this country, it's fundamentally just me and my brothers. We've got some cousins here and there, but I think it was just a way for my mum to make up for that lack of extended family so we didn't have the people, but we had the tinsel. And God knows what else. But yeah.
Athena, you're amazing. Thank you for sharing your Christmas with all of us. You can follow Athena's adventures by subscribing to her podcast, Keeping Athena Company. You can find links and handles to all things Athena in the show notes and on thesecretadventuresofblackpeople.com, as well as more information about the show and how to follow and support. To hear a little more of our conversation, you can visit patreon.com and become a supporter. Thank you to my mother and sister and Alana Nevins for story editing assistance. I'm Nicole Hill, host and producer of the show, and non-participant in the Christmas cooking. I just do the dishes. See you soon for more stories of Black folks holding it down across space and time.